One of the lights in the back is buzzing. Don't you make me get up. So, I had something pretty exciting happen to me since we last saw each other. Hello? You're never going to believe what just happened to me. Who is this? I just went grocery shopping and I paid with my phone. Amazing. Seriously, who is this? It's Miro. Who? What is that, like Cher? How did you get this number? How did that... Is that really all you have to say? Disappointing. Yes, that is the most exciting thing that has happened to me in the past 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I will say that that is the most exciting thing that will happen to me in the following 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, I can now pay with my phone. And did I tell everyone I know about it? Yes, I did. Gosh, I'm finally catching up to 2015. I wonder what marvels does the future hold. Turns out, not much. So I've tried to record this video multiple times, and each time there is something in recording that prevents me from editing the video and uploading it. Most recently, I just had toothpaste in the corner, like on my face. What's up with that? But then I realized if I'm ever going to bring out a video on Hoya flagellata, I will have to lower my standards. I mean, I don't seem to have an issue with that in other areas of my life, so why should YouTube be any different? In that name, subscribe. What, are you too good for this channel? I honestly have no idea how to transition to the next part of this video. Like, I feel like I should have someone in the back dancing and holding plants, just, to tie it all in. Today I wanted to talk about Hoya flagellata. This plant bloomed again for me this Monday, and I think it is the 5th time that it bloomed since I got it. And I was really hoping to record a video about this plant that I'm going to be happy about because this ain't our first rodeo. However, time decided to be a real bitch. One moment, it is Monday, and I'm glancing at this plant on my Hoya wall shelf with the buds just beginning to open, and the next thing I know, it is Thursday and, the flowers are falling off. So unfortunately, you will not be seeing this plant in bloom, at least not in the conventional way. I'm not gonna be holding this plant and showing you the flowers, but I do have some footage from the previous attempts that I will include here, and I do have plenty photos that you will see in this video, so you will actually get to see the flowers. It's just not gonna be on the plant right now. Obviously though, we will talk about this plant in the video, or at least I will do the talking, but I honestly don't mind if you talk back, as long as you're polite. There are 5 clones of Hoya flagellata that I was able to discover, this one being also one of them, and I do believe this is the second one that has been discovered. There is also some debate whether this plant should be its own species or whether it should be called Hoya caudata, but since I got it under the name Hoya flagellata, I will keep to refer to it as such, and after all the reading I did on this plant, I truly believe that it should be its own separate species. Hoya flagellata was originally discovered in Thailand. Herbarium sheet cites Tarutao as the location where it was collected, which matches the location of Tarutao National Park today. There is a change there from E to A. It is possible that the name was misspelled in the past because I did not find that that was the previous spelling. This national park spans over 51 islands, so I was not really able to pinpoint where exactly it was discovered, but there is Tarutao Archipelago, and there is also one of the biggest islands, Koh Tarutao, and one of the most notable ones, so I think that could be a possible location where this plant was discovered. There are several interesting things about Tarutao. For example, the original Malay name means old, primitive, and mysterious island. It was also setting for reality show Survivor in 2002 and an exile colony in World War II, but that didn't turn out so great because prisoners and guards, they banded together, they rebelled, they sunk around 130 ships, and they killed everyone on board, which rightfully earned them the name Pirates of Tarutao. So, a bit of history there. And to think that reading about Hoya flagellata led us here. The species was first collected by an Irish botanist, Arthur Francis George Kerr, in January of 1928. It was said to be found on the edge of a mangrove forest. A bit of an interesting thing here. If you take a look at the herbarium sheet and the plant description that was transcribed by Q, you will see that it says near H. rondata hook F. Hook F stands for Joseph Dalton Hooker. However, this doesn't really make much sense. If you try to Google any plant species really that has the epithet rondata, you will not find anything. So I took a look at herbarium sheet and at the wonderful handwriting, and I do believe that it says H. caudata, near H. caudata, which actually makes sense because these two species are compared, and some people do believe that this is the same species. Come to think of it, maybe that's not so interesting. I found it interesting, so I'm sharing it with you. Hoya flagellata was published in 1940 in Hooker's Econis Plantarum, and since then it has been discussed whether this is Hoya caudata, just another clone, or is it a separate species, and the opinions are divided. For example, in 1978 in the Malay Nature Journal, Richard Rins considers it to be Hoya caudata. More recently, in 2012, Livia Wantorp and Sri Rahayu wrote about the species diversity in Hoyas, and they too consider it to be Hoya caudata, as well as Folke Albers and Ulrich Mebe in their 2002 publication. Butchering of the names. Since these things are peer-reviewed, it seems to me that some of these botanists need a bit more convincing. Now, I'm not sure how one would go about this. Maybe it needs a subsequent publication. Maybe there needs to be an updated list on Hoyas of Thailand. I don't really know. Maybe this is already done, but Q records for whatever reason don't reflect this, but I did try to look into it and I wasn't able to find anything like that. It is said that Hoya flagellata was not discovered in Thailand, or at least not until the 2000s, since its original publication. In 1999, Toril Nijhuis, Ed Gilding, and Ted Green went to northern Malaysia and they discovered a clone there, which is over 100 kilometers away from the place where it was originally discovered. And that is the clone that I have here. This clone has the accession number TN99024, and they discovered it on Mountain Jerai or Gunung Jerai, and TN stands for Toril Nijhuis, Swedish Hoya collector, and the previous chairwoman of the Swedish Hoya Society that you saw in some Rayne Oakes video when she went to visit Sweden. I have not seen the clone from Thailand, or at least not in person, but in this clone from Malaysia, the leaves can get quite big for Hoya flagellata. In the clone from Thailand, the leaves are from 2 to 6 centimeters. In here, as you can see, they can get quite longer. Now, it is said this clone from Malaysia can have various shape of the leaf, but I think, looking at my plant, that the leaf shape is pretty uniform, but of course that is always due to the conditions. Both clones will have the same flower. To my knowledge, there is at least one more clone from Thailand that Surisa Somadee discovered when she visited Tarutao National Park in 2010, and this clone has the accession number SR2010-002. It seems that all the clones of Hoya flagellata circle under different names. You can find them as Hoya flagellata, Hoya caudata, or Hoya species affinity caudata. For example, this clone that is Hoya flagellata TN99024, which is only one of its names, can be found as Hoya flagellata TN99024, Hoya species affinity caudata TN99024. It can also be found under the IML number 1681, which is an accession number that David Liedl assigned to this plant, and at least one more name, Hoya caudata 990413, number 24, Gunung Jerai. Hopefully that is the correct accession number. The reason I'm mentioning all of this is because this one clone of Hoya flagellata circulates under all of these different names with all of these different accession numbers, and I just want to make it clear, Mountain Jerai, Gunung Jerai, Karak Peak are the same thing. You know, if someone for whatever reason decided to change the descriptor, or maybe, you know, put Karak Peak in one and Mountain Jerai in other, and also, you know, it is from the Karak province, from Malaysia, so, you know, just remember that if you're trying to get this particular clone. I have also seen Hoya flagellata AP1120 from Apodagis, and on their website they write Malaysia near Thai border, so I assume that is the location where it was collected, but I'm not really sure about the leaf size on that one. There also seems to be a variation in the color of the flower, so you will see descriptors pink, gold, and yellow attached to the name, though I'm not really clear what is the difference between gold and yellow. I know there is a clone SR 2012-051, and that one has the descriptor yellow attached to the name. As for the descriptor pink, as in Hoya flagellata pink, which is supposed to be a pink flower, all the photos that I have seen, and there are not many of them, it seems to me that the flower is white. So I'm not sure about that one. The color of the flower for the clone of Hoya flagellata that I have is white for the Corolla and reddish pinkish for the Corona. And it seems to me that no matter what color you have for the Corolla, whether it be yellow or gold, which is really the same, or pink, which is actually white, it seems that the Corona stays reddish and pinkish. The flower has no scent, or at least none that I can detect, and I'm not the only one in this. It seems to be generally accepted thing that this flower doesn't have a scent. However, there are some characteristics of the flower of Hoya flagellata that make it very interesting in my opinion. First is that it opens only at night. It will stay closed during the day, and then at late evening it will start to open. When it is closed, it kind of reminds me of a bell looking from the side profile or on some type of a skirt. And when it is open, it is almost flat, but the part of the Corolla will be rolled back. They look like dancing ballerinas with 5 legs, which is a terrifying thing to imagine, isn't it? Now the shape of the Corolla is very interesting. Obviously it is a 5-lobed Corolla, but the lobes become narrower towards the end and then they extend a bit. It is a very interesting shape, and those extended parts, those points, they are the ones that roll back during the night. From the center of Corona, there are 5 thread-like anther appendages that make this flower look very unique. Name flagellata comes from the word flagella, which is a plural form of the word flagellum, which means filiform appendages of plants or animals. In simple terms, this just means that something thread-like is attached or joined with another thing. And I do believe that this refers to these thread-like anther appendages that come out from the center of corona of Hoya flagellata. Flower is also slightly hairy, especially towards the edge of corolla. Since flower is closed during the day and it starts to open in late evening and remains open until the next morning, it is only logical to think that there is some type of a nighttime insect that pollinates this plant. And I have been wondering, does this Hoya actually have a scent, but maybe, you can smell it at certain time at night and we just didn't smell it. I don't think there is anyone out there sitting during the entire night and smelling occasionally their Hoya flagellata. And I'm not going to be the first person to do that, let me tell you that. The leaf is not as stiff and cardboardy like it is the case with Hoya caudata. It is a much softer leaf. There are some slight hairs in it, and the leaf, when the plant is watered, is a bit deeper green. My plant does need a bit more watering, so it's a bit paler, and there is some splash, but I don't think it's anything to write home about. I don't think you will be getting this plant because of the splash. You will most likely get it because of the flower. When this plant receives a bit more light, the leaves will become reddish, but I honestly don't think that's the look that suits this plant well, but I have the same opinion for Hoya caudata. I have sunstressed my Hoya caudata by accident, and this one too, and I just didn't really like it. I much more prefer when the leaves stay green. And, that's fine. With some Hoyas, the sunstress looks nice, it looks sexy and whatnot. With some of them, not so much. Another thing that I don't really like when it comes to some of these Hoya species is that the leaves will become smaller when they receive more light. When you don't water this plant, the leaves will start to lose their firmness pretty quickly, or at least that has been my experience. They will also become very, very pliable, and I don't really think this is a plant that likes to be underwatered. In fact, during the summer months, you may even need to water it up to twice a week. Obviously, this will depend what mix you have your plant in, what your conditions are, and you will, I think, after a couple of weeks discover what the regime should be, because again, the leaves will start to look very dull, they will be very pliable, and it's just not a very good look for this plant. I got my plant as a small unrooted cutting with 3 or 4 leaves in June of 2020 from Camilla Gedden from Sweden, and it was a really, really easy cutting to root. I think I propagated it in a glass of water, but honestly, this plant is very easy to root. You will not have any issues propagating it in whichever method that you prefer, because it produces a lot of aerial roots. They do stay small in my regular household conditions, or as regular as they get, but as soon as you start to propagate it, they are very easy to activate. I had my plant in several different potting mixes, and the first potting mix that this plant was in was bark and moss, and it was a mix that the plant loved as long as I stayed on top of my watering, and it bloomed for the first time only 6 months after I got it as a cutting in December of 2020. The buds look very interesting when they are closed. They have this very elongated long tip, and they are greenish in color on this hairy peduncle that is thread-like. In my experience, when this plant tries to bloom for the first time, it will take a long time for the buds to open. I remember checking back on my buds quite frequently, and for days or weeks perhaps, they stayed closed. They looked ready, but they stayed closed. However, ever since then, whenever this plant tried to bloom, they opened much faster than I thought they would. I always think, there are a couple of more weeks until this plant blooms, but you turn around and there they are, they're open. And I think that's why it also took me so long to record this video. I always think there is more time, but then they open, and before you know it, the flower is gone. The flower doesn't last very long. It lasts anywhere from 1 to 3 days, or so the people say. Now, in my experience, I have been getting consistently 3 nights and 2 days. Each time that it bloomed, it has been the same, 3 nights and 2 days. It never bloomed less, and it never bloomed longer than that. And I really don't think this is a plant that can bloom longer than that. Now, I think the duration of the flower will also probably depend on the conditions. One thing that I did notice is that this plant does not bloom so frequently in summer. I've had it throughout the last summer, and it was a bit hot and dry, so maybe that's the reason why. Why am I rhyming? But it really did not love the summer. It grew okay, but even though it has peduncles, it didn't bloom throughout the summer. It bloomed before May, and then I think after, sometime in September or October. In spring of 2021, in April, this is one of the plants that had root mealybugs. So I had to start it over, and the easiest way to do that is to cut off all the roots. So I had one long cutting, and I decided to cut it into 3 smaller ones. And actually it grew quite fast. I rooted it then in leca, and I decided to grow it in semi-hydro, and it really enjoyed growing in semi-hydro. It grew well. I think it liked that extra moisture, especially during that hot and long summer. Because I rooted this plant in a small plastic cup, it was time to move it to an actual pot. It was an upgrade, so I decided to put it in my own mix that is very similar to pon. It is zeolite, lava rock, and pumice. The reason I did this is I'm not sure about semi-hydro. There are times when I really like it, and there are times that I don't like it as much, but I think that's a topic for a separate video. But the only thing that I will say now is some of these Hoyas have very thin roots. So it seems to me if you let it dry out too much, the roots will die back, but also if there is constantly water, it's not that they mind. I haven't actually noticed that they do, but I noticed that sometimes the water in the reservoir will be a bit cold, even though my room conditions are always, the temperature is always 20 degrees. So I'm not so sure. This can obviously be solved if you have some self-watering setup with semi-hydro. So I don't think really there's anything wrong with semi-hydro. I have still a lot of Hoyas that do well, but I just felt like experimenting with Bond, and I think that's very typical for me. I love to experiment with my mixes and setups, and that's why you see stuff changing in the back all the time. To conclude on the potting mix, I just think this plant wants something that is airy, that is well ventilated. It has thin roots, and the roots I think are quite sensitive. It doesn't grow a big root system, at least not in my opinion. Yes, in semi-hydro it will grow a bigger root system, but that's true for almost any plant. It will grow quite a big root system in semi-hydro. But what I think that this plant wants is, once again, well aerated mix that you can water pretty frequently, but that it dries out quickly. And I would water it before it gets bone dry. There's, you're not gonna kill your plant if you skip a watering or two, but I think if it becomes a consistent habit, it's not gonna grow well. Now, this plant is a good grower in my opinion. It's not the fastest Hoya that you will ever encounter, but it's definitely not the slowest Hoya. And it seems to me that in my conditions, it grows best anywhere from, September to May, and then it starts again. It really just doesn't like my summer here, the hot temperature. It's not a thing for this plant. I fertilize my plant each time I water, and I use powdered orchid fertilizer. In fact, I do need to water it right after this video. The reason I fertilize it each time I water is because in this room it is always over 20 degrees and it stays under LED lights. It has been under both 36 watt light and under 20 watt light, and it just depends if you're gonna sun stress it a bit. I did not really notice that it has any effect on growth or flowering. Currently it's under 20 watt light and it is doing really well. If you don't grow your plant under a grow light, and if you have a darker winter, obviously your plant is not going to grow as much, and then you can dial back on fertilizing. In that case it is okay. But if you're going to grow your plant under a grow light in a warm, humid environment, there's really no need to cut back on fertilizing. They don't know it's winter. In terms of pests, I did not have any issues with pests. I think I had spider mites, the notorious spider mites, and of course the root mealybugs, and then it had mealybug. How did I say did not have any issue with pests? Dear Lord. Oh, no. Okay, well, we had pests. Okay, we had spider mites and mealybugs and root mealybugs, but it seems to me that this plant, despite all of that, it was restarted in May of this year, I think, and I only had 3 cuttings that were this big, and it grew quite well. Maybe it's not so easy to see on the camera, but I think it did a good job of growing. I think this plant is quite a resilient, tough plant. I don't think it's hard to grow, and if you like the flower, which I understand can be an acquired taste, make sure to get it. That is all for today, and that is all on Hoya flagellata. I really wish that it was in bloom right now, but I'm not even sure how I would record it. I think I would have to turn off the light to, get the flower to start opening, and then turn on the light, and that would probably make the flowers start to close. It's not immediate, but by the end of the recording it would close. Anyways, we are now getting very distracted and we are rambling, so best to end it now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and hit that like button. Leave a comment down below. Do you have Hoya flagellata? Do you like Hoya flagellata? And yeah, subscribe. That's necessity. It really is. I will see you very soon, and goodbye. I would like to take some time and thank my patrons. A massive shout out to my $5 patrons. One anonymous patron, Betsy Begonia, Bonnie Harris, Carrie Cynthia Taylor, Danube Daniels, Estelle Farah, Houseplant Heather, Hoyas and Whatnots, Kelso, Kristen Sherwood, Mars B, Martina, Alif Berde, Melissa Walker, Nicole Ferranti, Nicole and Caleb of Schleif Tropicals, PJ, Rachel Colette Conroy, Robin L. Jennings, Stephanie H2O, Spinach Geek, Tanya, TJWO, Vicky Dingler, Vojta Takoc, and Slokopni Pony. Also, big thank you to my $3 patrons: Angelina Farnan, April Arroyo, Brianna Phillips, Catherine G, Claudia L, Jerry's Garden, Lisa Helling, Lori Murphy, Morgan Kennedy, Nerdy Kathy, Nikki Ringlov, and Ruby. And a thank you to my $1 patrons: Caroline, Marissa Summerfield, Lauren Monreal, Ryan Lambert, and Tang Watanas Riakul. Thank you all so much for incredible support. You are amazing. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you very soon.